Welcome to Believe the Hope, the podcast where inspiration meets reality. Join us as we delve into stories of resilience, triumph, and the relentless pursuit of hope. Whether you're seeking encouragement or simply a reminder of the power within us all, this podcast is your guide. From personal journeys to expert insights, we explore what it means to believe in hope against all odds. Get ready to be inspired, uplifted, and empowered. This is Believe the Hope.
First, it's just realizing, ask yourself that question. Why am I still here? Because the problem is a lot of people wait for a near-death accident or a rock-bottom moment or the loss of a loved one before they start to question life. And you don't need a near-death accident. You don't need a rock-bottom moment in order to change. You can ask yourself that question. Why am I still here? Because life is a gift. You didn't have to wake up today, but you did. So if you're listening to this podcast, there's air in your lungs, your heart is beating, you are here for a reason. You woke up today for a purpose. So ask yourself, why am I still here? And as you start to get clarity on that, and then you just go and take a step, one step forward every single day, this is why I'm here. This is my purpose in life. Everything starts to change.
Believe the Hope podcast. I am here with Dr. Justin Moseley, aka the Mindset Doctor. And if you don't know Justin, he's a highly sought after international. And after surviving a near-death experience in 2018, Dr. Justin shifted from changing lives in his clinic to changing lives all over the world. Dr. Justin is a two-time TEDx speaker and host of the Mindset Doctor podcast. And he's a leader and has been on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Dr. Justin helps people master their minds so they can get out of their own way and step into their power and become the highest version of themselves to unlock their full potential. So, and you just hit a milestone on one of your TED Talks that were over 50,000 views. So congrats on that. That's awesome that it keeps growing and people are resonating with your message. And yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
I figured, obviously, as a mindset coach, there's some hope involved when you're talking to people and helping them feel inspired and getting out of their own way. So I wanted to get you on to talk and get your expertise on this topic for sure. So my first question with anybody is, because everyone has different is what does hope mean to them personally?
Yeah, I think hope is a seed of belief. Like, even if you can't see it, or even if you think something is unattainable, there's a seed of belief that it's possible. I think that's where hope lies. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people. People lose hope because they lack belief. They lack belief in themselves. They see all the things people around them can accomplish, and they don't think it's for them. They may want to achieve it, but there's more doubt than there is belief. So I think hope is a mixture of, you need that seed of belief that it's possible, and let that belief grow. And this mixture of faith and hope can make a lot of things happen.
Just from your experience, I know that I see years ago you had a near-death accident. So I would like to hear more about that, because I'm sure there's times probably after that experience where there wasn't a lot of hope, and you had to dive yourself and mindset, everything that you are now, and coaching through your clients, etc.
Right. And there's a lot of lessons around that. So I'm a chiropractor by trade. My wife's a chiropractor as well. We've got a practice outside of Nashville, Tennessee here. And we started our practice in 2012, built a great family practice for helping people, making a difference. And then in 2018, I went on a men's retreat and we went whitewater rafting. And it was just a freak accident. We hit the class 5 rapids, and I was sitting on the back of the raft, and our raft tipped over, and I got trapped underneath the rapid itself. And it's just started pushing me underwater. And I still remember the sound of my helmet scraping down the rocks as I was getting pushed under. And the last thing I remember thinking is, I'm not coming back up. And then everything went black, and everything went bright white. And it was the most peaceful, serene feeling I'd ever felt. And I lost consciousness. And I don't know how long it lasted, but I heard a voice that said, "Wake up." And thankfully I did, because I came back to consciousness and I was trapped underwater, wedged between two rocks. And I tried to push, and I didn't budge. And I kept pushing and pushing. Nothing was happening. And then thankfully my adrenaline kicked in, and I was able to push hard enough. I broke one of the buckles on my life jacket that was trapped underneath one of the rocks, floated to the top, gasped for breath, got swept down the river. Man, at that point, I was rocked. Like, what just happened? And we all question our purpose in life at some point. Why am I here? What's the purpose to all of this? But in that moment, I asked a different question. I said, why am I still here? Because things could have been different in that moment. What if I didn't hear wake up? Or what if I wasn't strong enough to break free? So I asked myself, why am I still here? And what I realized is I'd gotten comfortable in life because things were good. I was living my purpose. I was helping people. I was making a difference. Great relationship with my wife. We would travel and we had a good life. But I realized I was playing way too small. And if I truly wanted to step into the calling that was on my life, I needed to exchange my comfort for my calling. So that's when I started looking back at my life and I was like, what were some of the things that helped us be successful? And it was a lot of the work I did on myself, mindset, leadership, personal development, things that I'd studied, mentors that I've had. So at that point, I kind of shifted gears. I was like, I just want to put out content that helps people. So I started putting out a lot of videos on it. And I started a Facebook group the first of 2020, just putting myself out there. I don't know if you ever felt this. I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to listen. I'm just going to put this out.
This
And
feels that
so
way
to start,
sometimes.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to put it out there, see what resonates. And 1,000 people showed up into my Facebook group in the first month. So I was like, okay, people are listening. And then I just kept putting out more and more. And it led to me being able to speak all over the country and led to my first TED Talk was in 2022. I talked about lessons I learned from my near-death experience. And then uh, fast forward a couple of years later, I keep speaking more. And then people would reach out and be like, man, I love what you're doing. I wish I could do that. It just comes so natural to you. And I was like, no, speaking was not natural. For most of my life, I was terrified. So I actually shared this past TED Talk was on how I overcame my fear of public speaking. Because it was to the point I almost failed a speech class in college because I had a panic attack during my speech. So my whole message now is everyone's got a story to tell. So I want to help people overcome the fear so they can share their message with the world.
How do you help people maintain the hope or get out of that comfort to find their calling, to find that higher purpose?
Yeah. First, it's just realizing, ask yourself that question. Why am I still here? Because the problem is a lot of people wait for a near-death accident or a rock bottom moment or the loss of a loved one before they start to question life. And you don't need a near-death accident. You don't need a rock bottom moment in order to change. Like you can ask yourself that question, why am I still here? Because life is a gift. You didn't have to wake up today, but you did. So if you're listening to this podcast, there's air in your lungs, your heart is beating, you are here for a reason. You woke up today for a purpose. So ask yourself, why am I still here? And as you start to get clarity on that, and then you just go and take a step, one step forward every single day, this is why I'm here. This is my purpose in life. Everything starts to change. But an issue that people have a lot of times is they think I have to have this grand Mother Teresa sized vision for my life. I've got to solve world hunger or all the. No. Maybe your purpose today is to go put a smile on someone's face. If you're a chiropractor, maybe it's just somebody's having a bad day and you turn their power on with an adjustment and you just make them laugh today. Maybe that's the purpose for today. It doesn't have to be something grand. And that's why we minimize the stuff that we do because we see what others do. But you got to realize you're in front of people every single day. There's an opportunity to make a difference. If you're looking for those opportunities, you'll find them.
It's fun to mention that because this is these have all been very similar things. The small things that we can do on a daily basis. I was just actually interviewing my brother yesterday, and I'm one of the, and he said the very same thing. Is like, how do I show up when I wake up in the morning? How do I show up when my wife comes down the stairs? How do I show up when my kids wake up? How do I show up to my staff, et cetera, as he's going throughout his day? And yeah, this is to just make someone smile that day because you don't know what they're going through. They may be lacking. They may be even going to a region of with people I've said that the opposite of hope is complete hopelessness or despair, or they may be
Yeah.
going in that because they don't feel like anybody's listening or hearing them, or they haven't found their purpose, which is another thing that gets brought up a lot. And so, yeah, take you went from your death experience and were you, wow, I'm lucky to be alive. and just went but you
Hmm.
were, I mean, your life was still good. You went back and everything, but you found, like, I need to change. I need to, I need to step this. And you
Yeah,
took every little detail every day to just keep showing up. And, yeah, and does
yeah,
play a huge role as well.
for sure. And I think you mentioned it earlier, the comfort zone. I think it goes back to that. So that's what I shared on my first TED talk was how to step out of that comfort zone. Because when you step out of the comfort zone, it's not easy. I showed uh, the concentric circles here. So you got your comfort zone. When you step out of the comfort zone, you step into the fear zone. And that's when the fear, the worry, the doubt, the voices in your head saying, you can't do this. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not worthy enough. All those voices in our head start to show up. But if you can push through, and a great place to start is just doing positive affirmations. Because I tell people, you've got to speak louder than the voices in your head. You've got a subconscious program, a tape playing in your own head of all the things that you've done wrong in the past and why stuff won't work out. But you need to get a vision of where you want to go and then affirm that it's possible. And then when you can push through the fear zone, then you hit the growth zone. And that's where things actually get tough. Because how does a muscle grow? It needs resistance. You got to lift weights. You got to get heavier and heavier resistance in order for that muscle to grow. Well, that happens in life. We get put up against resistance. And a lot of people can't handle the resistance. They shrink back into the comfort zone where it's safe. But if you keep pushing through, every form of resistance you overcome, you get stronger. And then you go from the growth zone into the flow zone. And the flow zone is where the magic happens. That's where things that used to be hard become really easy to you. And you're just in this state of flow and life's just flowing to you. And then from there, you get into the legacy zone. That's the legacy you're here to leave. The results are no longer about you. What can I accomplish or what can I do? It's what is the legacy I can leave? Because one of the powerful questions that came from my near death accident, because I had to be real with myself, I was like, everything could have ended right there in that moment. So I asked myself, is this the legacy I want to leave? If it all ends right now, is this the legacy you want to leave? And the answer was no. And it still drives me to this day. I was like, I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize I could have done more. I could have helped more people. I could have made a bigger impact. So that drives me every single day. I'm looking for an opportunity to help people and make an impact in their lives. Because I look at it, I'm on bonus time now. So if there's any soccer fans, soccer is like one of the weirdest sports where how they keep score, there's a time limit, but at the end of the time limit, there's bonus time where only the referee knows how much bonus time is left. So I think that's kind of like our time here on earth where we're all in this bonus time. We don't know when it's going to end. So we better live each day fully and not about us, not here just a self-serving life. How can we make a difference in someone else's life? When you live like that, there's a magic that starts to happen.
Like, as you're in those different zones, it feels like it's almost a dynamic play where you feel like sometimes you're rushing through the flow and into the legacy zone. And then other times it's like, oh, I'm back to being in the work and the suck. I call it the embrace the suck phase where everything just seems hard. Maybe that's
Yeah.
just because owning a business or just being just different things in life. But I think
Yeah.
where
Well,
you
so
feel
that's a
like
good point.
yeah, like your family is like, you're like, oh, I'm taking care of my family, I'm providing, I'm in a good zone, I'm in my legacy zone. But then other times it's almost like a dynamic where other things are, maybe you're working on your health, and that's in
Right.
the embrace the suck phase type of thing.
Yeah. And there's always a new level of comfort zone. So as you push through and you get in this new flow zone and legacy zone, well, we don't just stay here because either you're growing or you're dying. So we get into that zone and then we start to look at, okay, what's next for us? What can we accomplish? And in order to accomplish that next thing, we get boxed into a new comfort zone. Like, okay, if I want to go and have achieved this next level, I got to start over and work out of this comfort zone through that fear zone and through the growth zone all over again to go to a new level.
Through those zones and they're working on their hope and their purpose. How does one help spread more positivity and community and in their own community as also into the world? How is you?
Yeah, when it comes to purpose, like I don't think people find their purpose. I think their purpose finds them. I think as we're going through life, one of the best things to do, and I shared this in the TED talk that I just did, a buddy of mine, he's a mentor. He said, you are perfectly positioned to serve the person you once were. So think about that. There's things you've been through in your life. There's lessons you've learned. There's obstacles you've faced, challenges you've overcome. you can take the lessons you've learned and speak those into other people. Because right now, somebody's going through something you went through in the past. You mentioned being a business owner. There's ups and downs of business and challenges and staff you got to hire and all the things that go with that. Well, there's other people dealing with that kind of stuff too. So you can actually speak life into them by just taking the own lessons you've been through in your life. So I think when it comes to purpose, it's starting there. It's what have I been through? So that's what happened with me. And this whole mindset doctor thing came from me looking back in my own life. Like, what am I passionate about? Well, I read my first Tony Robbins book when I was 16. And that came because I struggled with self-doubt, insecurity, lack of self-confidence and self-worth. And I found myself in a bookstore and I found Awaken the Giant Within, which is like a 600-page book from Tony Robbins. And I read it and it really opened my mind to, if you change your mind, you can change your life. You don't have to settle. You can continue to grow. And it led me to people like Jim Rohn, who talked about, if you want more, you've got to become more. And Zig Ziglar, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. So I was just feeding my mind constantly. And since for over 10 years now, I've been reading 100 books a year just because I'm passionate about consuming knowledge. But I got to a point, it was like, I want to take what I've learned and give that to other people. So same thing for you in your life. Look at the things that you're passionate about and the challenges you've faced and the obstacles you've overcome and say, how can I use my experience to help someone else? I think that's the beginning of finding your purpose, because you didn't go through this life by coincidence. Like, you went through this for a reason. How can you take what you've learned and help someone else?
Your version of hope, or your thought of hope, is faith that there's something better for you on the other side. How does one maintain the hope and the faith that there's something better, but also have the realization of where they're at and the work needed to be done to go through that, to reach that?
Yeah. One of the things I like to tell people is to borrow other people's belief. So one, you need to get around other people that can speak life into you. Because a lot of times we get in our own bubble and we have the doubts, the fears, the worries, but we don't see the strengths that we have, the talents, the abilities. And if you're around the right people, then they can speak life into you. And just that little, it's like a seed that's planted in your mind. And if it can start to grow, you'll start to become more confident. You'll start to have more belief. And then I like to bring this to kids. Like, think about, if anybody that has kids that's listening, your kids think you can do anything. They think you're this superhero. They can do everything. What if you believed in yourself as much as they believe in you? Or think about your mentors or coaches or people that you look up to. If they were in your situation, you're like, yes, they could solve this easily because you believe in them. But what if you believed in yourself as much as you believe in them? So one, we've got to start believing in ourselves more. And a great way to do that is surround ourselves with people, not the people that are going to bring us down and tell us why we can't do it, but they can speak all the ways that we can do it. And as we start to believe that, we borrow their belief. And the more we borrow their belief, the more it becomes our own belief. As that belief strengthens, the more we're able to accomplish.
And another episode of that Super Bowl came up, and they turn off all the lights before the halftime show, and they're setting everything up, and then there's like, oh, someone turns on their phone, or they hold a light up, and then the next thing you know, it's this section's lit up and this section's lit up, and then all of a sudden there's everything, a giant stage and all this fireworks and everything's going off and everything's lit up, even though all the lights are still off, but you can see everything that's right in front of you. And whether it's spreading in the community or having those type of people around you, each little light that comes on gives you vision, more clarity. It gives you a lot to believe a little bit more in that. I also mentioned that there's some a little bit of a, not necessarily naive or delusion, not in a naive and delusional way, but a little bit of naive that self, or that you can accomplish it when no one else believes in you, is actually helpful, because you just need those one person that are speaking that life into you, or that light into you, to have, even though you're like, man, I want $500 someday, and I have $20 in my bank account right now because I just paid rent. So there's that belief that, you have the confidence and belief that because someone's speaking that into you, that you're going to be that person someday, and you're working everything into that to be that someday. And it can seem daunting, but that's the way I visualize it, as that stadium being just lit up one section at a time with just small little lights.
Right,
And
yeah.
like a halftime
And
show.
speaking of lighting up, it makes me think of that B.J. Palmer quote. And he said, it's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. Because we can curse the darkness and think about how bad things are, or we can light a candle and be a light to the world. And then as it goes to the community, what if we lit candles in other people and we just lit a bunch of candles, just like the stadium? Then all of a sudden, it can go from a completely dark stadium to now you can see everything if enough people turn on their light. So I like to, one, turn on my own light, but then help other people turn on theirs.
Sean did that quote when I was doing the interview with them. Sean,
Yeah, that's a
one of
great
our
quote. Yeah.
mentors and coaches, when
Yep.
we're doing
And that's another thing too.
Yeah.
It's get around mentors and coaches. Because let's say if you want to make $10 million, well, you need to find people that have done it before and look at what the path is like and count the costs. Am I willing to sacrifice and go through what it takes to accomplish that? And if the answer is yes, then okay, what's the model? How can I do that? Goes back to Tony Robbins, success leaves clues. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find people that are doing it and let them show you the way. And I like to call it writing a check to go faster. If there's a coach or a mentor that I can pay that can show me the way, it'll take me from A to B a lot faster than I can on myself without me having to learn the lessons or lose the money and do all the things. I'm willing to write a check to go faster, to invest in myself to achieve it a lot quicker.
Yeah, back as people are seeing this, people will always ask you, how did you achieve X? But rarely do they ask you what were all the things and lessons you learned and all the headaches and downfalls you
That's
had
right.
and the times you wanted to give
Yep.
up, going through that process to get to that next level, as you're moving through
Yep.
into those different zones you talked about earlier. Um, yeah, and well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I know you have your podcast. Is one of the reasons why we started this podcast is because one more avenue of someone getting a positive message in some way, shape, or form that we put out into the world. I feel like in a um, I hope becomes a large podcast someday. But at the end of the day, if it's only helping 100 people, it's still helping. That's 100 people that are going to spread more light into the world that we didn't have
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and a couple of things right there come up for me. One is that other B.J. Palmer quote that I actually shared in my TED Talk was, you never know how far-reaching something you may think, say, or do today can affect the lives of millions tomorrow. So that's where I'm glad you started the podcast, because you're speaking life and you never know whose life it's going to change. And then the other thing that came up, a friend of mine, he's got a podcast that's had over 10 million downloads. So you know the podcast world, like that's huge.
That's
He
a
gets
lot.
like 50,000 downloads a month. But, and people see the highlight reel. They see like, man, that's amazing. What they didn't see is 9 months in, he was getting like 50 total downloads a month. Not 50,000, 50 total. And he was questioning. He was like, nobody's listening. Is this worth me continuing to do this? I'm 9 months in. It's not really gaining traction. And he said he got an email from a guy in Japan. And the guy said, because of your podcast, I didn't take my own life. And he said from that moment on, he's like, I don't care if one person's showing up or 50,000 people are showing up. I'm going to keep showing up and speak to that one person. So that's how powerful platforms like this can be. You never know who's listening. You never know the impact that you can make.
Else that you like to discuss, any insights that we haven't covered?
I think one is just letting people know you are enough. It's great to have goals and ambitions. I think we should have that. That keeps us pushing forward. But you are enough exactly the way you are. You don't have to be someone else. You are perfectly designed for a purpose, by a purpose. Like there's a reason you are here. So go back to that question. Ask yourself, why am I still here? Like I said before, life's a gift. You didn't have to wake up today. So we can get a true answer of why am I still here? And it's okay. People get caught up on thinking, if I think of my purpose, it's my purpose for the rest of my life. Like, no, maybe it's a purpose for this season. Maybe it's for this week or this month or the rest of this year, but find something that's why you are still here. And as you continue to grow, there's going to be new opportunities and new challenges, new obstacles you face, and new purpose will develop. But ask yourself, why am I still here?
With you, learn more about having a stronger mindset, building that purpose and clarity in their life.
I have the Mindset Doctor podcast, so check it out wherever you listen to your podcast. And check out my YouTube, not my YouTube, check out my TED Talk on YouTube. So just go to YouTube, put in Justin Moseley TED Talk, and the one that I just did will come up. It's how I overcame my fear of public speaking. And whether you have the fear or not, I've had a lot of people I've got friends that speak all over the country as well, and they learn stuff from my talk that they're applying as well. But my whole purpose of that is to help people share their message with the world. Because I believe you listening, you've got a story to tell. There's a message inside of you the world is waiting to hear. So check out my TED Talk on YouTube or follow me on Instagram at Dr. Justin Moseley, or you can go to drjustinmoseley.com and mindshiftlinks.com. I've got a bunch of free resources there as well. But yeah, if anything that I said resonated, let me know. Let Paul know. We do this because we want to make a difference. So if anything that we said helped you, made a positive impact in your life, let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That was a perfect ending to everything. And I appreciate your time today. I know you've been traveling around speaking and interviewing or recording your podcast. So I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to be here today and share your insights and spread more positivity, healing, and joy to the world.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Next time we'll bring you another episode of the Believe the Hope podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Believe the Hope podcast. And if you want to be part of the movement and spread more hope, positivity, and inspiration into the world, make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends and family. And until next time, we'll bring you another episode of the Believe the Hope podcast.